can't believe you made it in today. It's been a rough week for you.
Why?
I assume all of your fantasy teams just got destroyed.
I don't know. I didn't tweet about it. Did it really? If a tweet falls in the forest, did it actually happen?
So that would just mean you thinking or typing the tweet out. And do you think you could go an entire month without tweeting?
I think I can. Here's the question. I'm gonna turn it over on everybody else. Do you think the NFL could not be funny for an entire month?
No, I actually want to make this bet.
Okay. Well, what month?
January.
Well, are you gonna
June?
Are you gonna tweet out the podcast then?
Sure.
Okay.
What's the bet though? Just a gentleman.
Well, here's the thing. So I give you a lot of crap, but you actually are very good at choosing food. So a dinner probably is a solid bet.
All right, let's do it. Now the parameters of this are you're allowed to go on Twitter. Obviously, I can't monitor that.
Actually, that'd probably be better for you if I did.
It's something I'm counting on. You can't You can't do anything on Twitter. So a like, a retweet. I'm going to look at your drafts. You can't have some 100 inbox worth of tweets that you've like screenshotted and sent to people. You also can't DM people.
I can't what DM?
DM people on Twitter.
That's tough.
You have to go cold turkey.
So okay,
you can't do anything on Twitter. You can scroll through the timeline, but you can't do anything.
I think this is like one thing where you and my wife are perfectly aligned in priorities here. Here's the thing.
I'm not gonna get there.
Here's the thing.
Oh, that is such a great opportunity.
Here's the thing. Am I allowed to send tweets I find obnoxious into the Skype messaging to our other friends at PFF? Because I think you find that more annoying than me tweeting.
I don't know. We should consult an arbiter on this one.
Because that's a good question, right?
I'm not sure if that falls under the jurisdiction of you have to go cold turkey from Twitter.
Because if somebody tweets like on tilt about their fantasy team and it proposes rule changes to a game that's been around for 20 years because they lost one game based on one fumble, I should be able to give that to the masses, or at least like the 5 people in our Skype chat.
I'm curious what people would say is harder. Not going on Twitter at all, or being able to go on Twitter and not tweet for you to do. What do you think would be harder? Because now I'm having second thoughts.
Right, because for me, I just kind of like use it as like entertainment. So me tweeting is just me being,
of course,
is just me being like, just something to do. But
finally, something that your wife and I are perfectly aligned on. You're lucky that I like both you and your lovely family. Actually, you're lucky that I like your family. Because that was
like in analysis so class in college where you wrote a proof and the professor's like, you actually didn't need that little part, right? That was you just now.
Yep. That was basically all of the proofs I wrote.
Yeah.
Not true.
Did you write "Thank you, Sashi" in just a random like sentence in the middle of a proof?
Yep. I also once on the Putnam wrote Dr. Dre lyrics.
Good stuff.
To question 12. Yeah. Or there's 2 sets of 6, right? So it must have been question 6. Okay. Let's get into questions to the dark web. Of course, brought to us by Samporanta. Samporanta is a sparkling water for men. Finally, because there are a lot of sparkling waters and they're all clearly for women, and men love sparkling water and football, and Samporanta is here every single week of the football season to help serve the most underserved population, which are broke football watching males. So
recently single too.
This week's flavor is I can't even elderberry with a hint of massive credit card debt for all of you out there that play fantasy football.
I like it.
It'll help you rant and rave. I can't. People are hilarious to me. Yeah. That's why the economy crashes every couple of years. These idiots. Our questions are Ken Keebles at Ken Keebles 13. He says, Trubisky's expected points added per dropback compares favorably to Big Ben, Deshaun Watson, Andrew Luck, Russell Wilson, Matt Ryan, but his PFF grade is comparable to Josh McCown, Brock Osweiler, Lamar Jackson. I don't know how Lamar Jackson worked his way into this. That he should not be in this group. Ryan Tannehill. And then why? Ken Keebles is triggered by this. I'm triggered by many
when
things,
Brock
Ken
Osweiler's Dolphins played Mitch Trubisky's Bears, what was the result?
Oh, man, I'm trying to think. This is an epic game where I believe the brocketing occurred.
Yeah, interesting. Lamar Jackson, what's his record as a starter so far this year?
4-1.
Oh, interesting. So we all have this common agreement that Lamar Jackson isn't very good at throwing, and that Brock Osweiler is also not very good at throwing.
Yep.
Independent of what their record is, either in specific games or in Lamar Jackson's case, a month of football. And yet we still haven't gotten. And Ryan Tannehill is what, like 6-3 as a starter this year?
Yep.
And we haven't gotten to that idea about Mitch Trubisky?
Yeah, you're triggered by this. That's okay. I understand that.
The Bears are 10-4, George. I don't know.
This is a good question, though, because people are not familiar with the PFF process. It's a hard one to understand, and this can be a divisive or a learning moment for a lot of us out there, which is simply this, that the result of a play is not necessarily indicative of how a particular player on that play played. That's the moral of the story here.
Yeah.
Mitch Trubisky and the Bears overall have been a successful offense. Has it been because he has played really well? That has not been the case in the majority of his games. He has made a lot of turnover-worthy plays. A lot of them have not actually manifested in turnovers. His receivers have caught an abnormally high rate of his passes, so he's benefited there. He has a lot of good weapons and a good offensive scheme.
Good offensive line.
Good offensive line. And he also has the Blake Bortles secret sauce, a defense that is absolutely killing it.
Putting you in good spots all the time.
So the record is just not going to be indicative. I looked at expected points added on only expected throws. So these are the throws that we don't upgrade, we don't downgrade. And there are 3 players, this is interesting, there are 3 players who are generating positive expected points added on their expected throws. Can you guess who they are?
I think I can. So Brock, one of them.
Nope.
Oh, interesting. On a positive EPA on expected throws.
Yep. I may have cut Brock out because he doesn't qualify on the number of
Ryan Tannehill.
Tannehill's close, but he's not there. He's 6th.
Okay, Big Ben.
Nope.
Okay, I'm bad at this. What?
Yep. I don't understand how you haven't got the first one.
I said Mitch Trubisky, right?
Okay, Trubisky is 1.
Yeah.
The other 2 should be...
Nick Mullins.
No.
Damn it.
I don't know how you can't figure out the obvious ones here. It's Mahomes and Breeze.
I guess so. I'm jaded in the sense because Breeze and Mahomes have so many positively graded throws that I'm ignoring.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
There is another facet to this, right? Which is what Trubisky and his offense are doing is not a bad thing. It's a really good thing. But it's not showing. These are expected throws. These are the throws that every quarterback is making. Okay, so Mahomes and Breeze happen to have a great offensive scheme. Andy Reid, Sean Payton, I think we could have a great debate on which one of those coaches are the best coach in the NFL right now.
Mm-hmm.
But what they're also doing is making positively graded throws at the highest rates in the NFL, and that's not something that Trubisky is doing. He's making more negatively graded throws than positively graded throws. So my point being, my long-winded point, is simply to try and say that where Trubisky is generating value for his team are on plays where he's not actually doing a lot of the work. He is getting the average grade for that throw because it's expected.
Yeah, and so there was another question that followed up by somebody, which I think was a bit disingenuous, but it was basically this idea of because when I plotted, basically EPA per dropback and PFF grade per dropback in close games, the trend line fit 80% of the points really well. And he made an argument that if you're off of that trend line, does that show PFF's biased against that player? And of course, like anybody that studied any math knows that like if every point hugged the line, this is the Freakonomics teacher test score thing.
Right.
If everything hugged the line perfectly, you would know that we were rigging the system because that's like a sign of it. Randomness happens. And in this particular case, that nobody seems to ask about how Josh Rosen and Cody Kessler, their EPA per dropback is way beneath the line. They only ask about Trubisky because Trubisky obviously plays for a team that's overperforming. Same thing with the Dolphins' 2 quarterbacks. They seem to be clustered together here.
Right.
I think it's a good lesson here.
Because the viewers can't see what you're talking about, they can head to your Twitter, sift through your endless number of tweets, and find that one.
I will retweet it right now.
Find that one. But basically what you're saying is there are guys whose EPA doesn't match up with their PFF grade. Their EPA generated is much higher than what we'd expect from the other quarterbacks with that level of grade. Trubisky sticks out among that group. And, this is just a simple fact. If you watch the games that he's played and you actually analyze all of his throws, I don't know how you could possibly come to a conclusion otherwise, which is another reason why John Gruden won that trade.
Yep. I agree. I mean, I think,
saying.
the Bears, and this could be one of the reasons, so we're not going to talk about Bears fans very much.
Jacksonville North.
We're not going to talk about Bears fans very much.
Every Bears fan.
But the thing is the Bears do need Trubisky to work out.
Yes.
Because if he doesn't, they don't have a first-round pick until 2021.
If he doesn't, they're the Jags.
They're the Jags. They are the Jags.
They're the Jags with probably a better supporting cast.
Speaking of the Jaguars, if you want to go to the PFF YouTube page, look at our regression teams revisited. We did talk about the Jags. We talked about them in the preseason, and we were called idiots for saying that defense regresses, that Bortles is not on a clear linear path forward
up to the top, and that's come to fruition. We also took an L on the Falcons as we should have. So just one.
Yeah, right. So yeah, go ahead and check that out.
Great
should
plug.
Should we move on these games?
Wow, what a segue, man. It's a time where you and I are perfectly aligned. The games this week.
Can we start with a short game?
First thing we've got to start with is that if you want, for the last time, we have to say this.
Oh, that's right.
If you want to get a little bit more out of each game this week, because there are some bad ones.
USF Marshall tonight.
Yep. You can head to mybookie.ag. Bowl games, NFL games,
USF
college
+3
basketball games. They've got you covered. They also have in-game live betting. So,
ooh.
You show up a little late to the party, still got a drink for you. Use promo code PFF to get a $1 for $1 match on your first deposit. It's very simple. PFF plus mybookie.ag. You play, you win, you get aligned.
Can I just propose the first game we talk about because it's going to be brief?
Let's go.
Chicago -4 at San Francisco. Ooh. San Francisco's 3rd consecutive home game. There's really only one way to look at this game. We don't have a pick on it on Greenline, but if you're going to bet it, Nick Mullins is the better quarterback at home getting points.
I have nothing else to say.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go to the Saturday games.
Saturday games
got that one knocked up.
A beautiful combination of exactly what the holiday season is all about. You got to get the bad stuff out of the way early, right? You got to have whatever disgusting main course your aunt brings over for Christmas Eve first, so that you can get to the dessert that hopefully was freshly baked.
But much like Washington, Tennessee, you can't discard your aunt.
Right.
She's your aunt.
You've got to be nice.
She's important.
She
this
might
game's
have
important.
Really weird political views.
Yeah. This game's important, but it sucks, but it's still important.
Tennessee
just like
Washington is the worst important game of the NFL season.
Yes.
And it can only be outdone potentially by Washington Philly, which depends upon the result of this game.
I want it to happen so bad.
Oh, my gosh. So that could potentially be the Sunday night game, and I am praying that
if that's a Sunday night game, I will be off Twitter for 2 months.
Yeah,
as part of the bet.
Okay, so the Titans are favored by 10.5. The tough thing about saying this is simply too much is Josh Johnson is simply terrible.
Yeah, but he was effective on the ground last week against the Jags, who have a better defense than Tennessee.
That's true.
And we know because of Lamar Jackson that running quarterbacks matter and can propel teams into the playoffs.
Marcus Mariota has more clean pocket ints over the past 2 seasons than any other quarterback.
Well, honestly, if you're going to look at a way to sort of handicap this game, what you look at is the fact that Tennessee receiving core, you're talking about
are bad.
Corey Davis, Tajay Sharp's questionable
Generational
for
talent.
a couple of reasons. I think the running backs are generational, obviously,
Yep.
but their offensive line.
When you start
has
a
been banged up.
conversation about a team's offense with Derrick Henry and they're favored by 10 points, you take the other side of it blindly.
And Washington's defensive backs have not been great this year. Like, I think Josh Norman hasn't played up to his potential, but they're not terrible. They're the HaHa Clinton Dix and DJ Swearinger are ball hawks, right? They can take advantage of those throws. Even in the game where the Titans beat the Jags by a ton on that Thursday night, he still threw a clean pocket interception over a wide open. He's still
do you think
supremely
there's
flawed.
a single team in the NFL for whom the Titans should be a 10 or more point favorite against at home?
No, I mean, because here's the deal.
It's a legitimate question.
In
Like,
week
are we saying
five,
the Redskins are the worst team in the NFL?
Week 5, Tennessee, granted, was on the road. They were only 4-point favorites against Buffalo, and every single Tennessee person said that it was the biggest slap in the face that they've ever seen. And Buffalo beat them outright, right? Yeah. And so, I agree with you.
Here's my last point, because I think this is a good opportunity for you to enjoy a really bad game. The total for this game is set at 37.
It's the second consecutive Washington game.
You're going to tell me that a game with a 37 total is going to be decided by 10.5 points. I'm going to take the other side of that every time. All right. The Sunday or Saturday evening game. This game may be the best game. I guess probably 2 other games that are close to it. But one of the best games of the week. The formerly San Diego Chargers welcome in the Baltimore Ravens, who are rushing in from Baltimore. Chargers 4-point favorites at the moment, total at 43.5, and I'm just gonna fade 2 things: the narrative about Baltimore's running game being some massively successful unit that is going to torch the league, and then secondarily the predictiveness of the Ravens defense.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that a few times. Baltimore's absolutely a top 5 unit in the league, if not the best unit in the league. But we've seen when they've played teams like the Saints, when they've played teams like Kansas City, that they can be the other teams can score enough points, right? And when I look at this game, what it reminds me of, and obviously this is just one data point, but it reminds me of when the Broncos with Tim Tebow went into New England at the end of 2011. They're on a hot streak, but you look at how the schedule they've played, you look at the way that the quarterback is going about his business. You come into a team here that has a really good defense. The plays that Lamar Jackson has tried to make in the passing game are to the tight end. Well, the Chargers have the best tight end eraser in the NFL in Derwin James.
Yep.
I think the Chargers kind of they toy with the Ravens here a little bit. Now, as far as the total, we were talking about something at 43.5. We like the over. The reason I think you like the over in a game like this is I think it does end up something like 35-10 or 28-17 or something like that in favor of the Chargers. So if you're looking for a Saturday evening parlay, you go. This is a classic sort of like square/chalk over and the favorite type thing.
Yeah, I think this should be a good game. Tight ends targeted against Derwin James have netted a 16.7 passer rating. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, well, you just remember the best offense in the NFL last week tried to throw a 5-yard out to Travis Kelce on a 3rd and 6 and just erased him. So
that was an amazing. Derwin James,
one-on-one,
so good, and it's so sad to me because I'm a big Niners fan, and I just wanted him so badly, and they had the opportunity. It's not that Mike McGlinchey is bad, but it's just like,
yeah, I mean that's the point with value, right? It's not that Saquon Barkley's bad. It's that Sam Darnold could be far better in terms of value.
Redraft the top 5, just sort of agnostic of team.
Mayfield, Ward, James, Darnold. Trying to think. And then where else are we going there? Because Chubb's had a nice year in terms of statistics with sacks and stuff, but not great.
Not particularly actually playing that well.
Jair Alexander 5th.
Yeah.
Jair's kind of fallen off a little bit, but he's been great.
I'd have a hard time still not taking Darnold second. The Jets suck.
Yeah. No, and he looked great the other day.
The Jets are terrible.
And he's only 21. Like the thing that's interesting about the Mayfield, Darnold, Mahomes discussion is that Baker's older than Mahomes.
Mayfield was in 8th grade when Darnold was born.
Yeah, it's true.
So
that's how that works.
Yeah, so the Chargers the right pick here. All right, Sunday. Let's go through the bad games really quick. Atlanta at Carolina. This game sucks. Taylor, Tyler, Heineke, Nicky, Nuki.
We may still be right about Atlanta finishing ahead of Carolina, despite how bad Atlanta's been.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad that Cam Newton is out. That is the smart move. Protect his trade value for this offseason. This game sucks. I don't think that the spread right now, Falcons on the road, favored by 3.5.
This is a no play on my end.
I mean, come on.
Yep.
Falcons have been a bit rough. Cincy, Cleveland, another game that is terrible. The Browns are favored by 9 at home. The Browns are favored by 9. I repeat, the Browns are favored by 9.
Yeah. Our friend Ed Fang pointed out that there are 4 mediocre teams that are favored by a touchdown or more this weekend. At home, Cleveland, one of them. I wrote in our show notes, Eric no longer cares about the Bengals after they got over 5.5 wins with their win against Oakland. So I think Cincinnati's the right side, but you have to have some major eggnog to partake in that. Are you an eggnog guy? I'm not an eggnog guy.
Not a big eggnog guy. No. I never saw.
Doesn't seem like your type of thing.
Yeah. It's just like if you want to drink, there's so many
better,
more efficient and better.
It's like
drinks.
Miller. It's like Miller Lite. If you want beer, just have a good beer, right?
Sure.
Yeah, you don't even like beer.
That's your thing.
What about? Okay, here's a question because we're gonna go to this next game. The Giants at the Colts.
Good.
Colts are 9-point favorites at home.
Yes, they are.
If you were betting win totals, right? You bet the Giants under 7. Mm-hmm. They're currently 5-9, which means you at least get your money back on that bet. Yep. If you are of the risk-averse type and you think the Giants have a chance of – so should you hedge and bet the Giants +9 in this game, knowing that if they lose by a touchdown, you get not only your win total money, but you get that bet back. And if they lose by more than 9, you get your win total money back minus whatever you bet on the Giants.
For a friend, I assume?
for a friend.
Yeah, I would do that.
Because most people say you should only – hedge if the bet that you're hedging with is positive EV, and in our case it's not because we don't have a pick on this game. It just depends upon what kind of stake you have in the bet and what your risk. Like if the Giants win out, then you're like really tilting off of this stupid win total bet. But you can recoup a little bit of it here by betting the Giants +9.
I don't hate it.
Yeah.
Best of luck to your friend, by the way.
Dale. Yeah.
So the interesting thing about this game is that Tennessee favored by a bunch against Washington at home. Indy favored by a bunch against the Giants at home, and they both need to win to preserve that sort of win in your in game on week 17. But and then Baltimore has got this. Baltimore Pittsburgh is another side to that coin where Baltimore winning potentially screws over both those teams, right? At the moment, Indy or Tennessee. If you had to pick one to make it to the playoffs, you're going with?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because if Indy were to win this game, they and Tennessee would have an equal chance of making the playoffs, 41% each. We've been on this for a long time. In October, we said, here's a good bet the Colts division. They probably won't get there, but it was still a good play. I think we have to stick with our guns here. Indianapolis has the better quarterback. Indianapolis has the better coaching staff. Indianapolis has, and not to say anything about Tennessee, it's just that Indianapolis is so good there. Indianapolis is doing the most with their defense. I know the game will be in Tennessee, but I love Indy here. I think if Baltimore were to falter, I think that the NFL would be better for it because I think the the Indianapolis Colts are going to be a really exciting team in the playoffs should they make it.
I've not tested whether this is stable among offensive coaches or not, but the Colts have, I put this in air quotes, forced the most coverage busts of any offense this season by 3 or 4. The Steelers are second, and the Chiefs are third. So, I mean, at
good
least
company.
That sort of passes the smell test, but I think it's a testament to what another feather in the cap of Frank Reich, who has revitalized Andrew Luck in that offense. And, this sort of speaks to his ability to.
If the Colts were to lose the game, they're only a 13% chance to make the playoffs. So it's basically out of it if they were to lose. So I do think
they would need Tennessee to lose as well and Baltimore to lose,
which are both things that we can see happening.
Got the Tennessee shade.
Well, actually, even Tennessee doesn't even have to lose this upcoming game because they beat them and they'll have the tiebreaker with the sweep. It's mostly about Baltimore, and then Miami can creep in the back door if they win a game here.
Exciting. Okay, let's run through some other ones. Bucks, Cowboys. Cowboys favored by 7 at home after a very disappointing loss. I do like the idea of the Cowboys figuring it out. I also hate the idea of the Cowboys figuring it out based on who that requires to figure it out. So I think for that reason, this one seems like
here's an angle I like in this game. The total is 47.5, almost entirely because of Tampa Bay's defense being bad.
Yep.
And we even shade the over there. If you're playing DFS, think about the Dak Cooper stack. I think Dak and Cooper come back here. Last week, Cooper was completely shut out by Indianapolis. That's something that I kind of think is an interesting play here.
Great.
I know you love fantasy.
When I go
discussion.
spend 400 hours this Friday building lineups.
You don't have to. I just told you what to do.
I used to build Legos. Now I just build DFS lineups. Brick by brick. Minnesota at Detroit.
Best brick.
I'm just bitter because both my fantasy teams didn't even make the playoffs this season.
Best brick.
I used to be really good at season-long fantasy. Like, I was dedicated. I did my homework. I had all, I had played in auction leagues. I had all my values and everything and strategy ready to go. And ever since working for PFF, I have been awful. Awful because I don't put any time into it.
Right.
I just don't have any time when the season rolls around because I'm actually getting paid now to do other things. And so
it's not for the love of the game, George.
I also no longer have time on Tuesday nights or Wednesday nights.
Just grind out waivers.
So I don't pick up anybody and I miss out on every waiver and it sucks, man. It doesn't suck that much though. Detroit, a 5.5 point underdog to the Minnesota Vikings. I will cede to you because you know everything about the Vikings. I hate this game.
I hate this game. I think the Vikings will let down here a little bit. I don't know if they lose. I do know that their offensive the renaissance against Miami was basically due to being efficient running the ball early. Mm-hmm. Miami's defense is terrible there. Detroit's better there. Detroit, couple of their redeeming qualities, they stop the run okay. And then Slay.
She's really nice. Has a good heart.
Yeah. She's comforting. Slay on the outside can possibly cover one of the Vikings' 2 receivers when Detroit, Minnesota played the last time.
He means well.
Yeah. When Detroit, Minnesota played the last time, Minnesota was not efficient offensively. Kirk turned the ball over a couple times. So I do think there's an opening here for Detroit. I probably don't want to touch this game.
But if you have to pick it and you're getting 5.5, I think Detroit is the right side.
Yeah.
Jacksonville, Miami, another amazingly great game. The Dolphins and all of their splendor are favored by 4 points at home against Cody Kessler and the Jacksonville Jaguars, who it turns out are just an abomination of an offensive football team.
Yeah, go Jacksonville though. This game ends 7-3, in which case it's a push. If it ends 7-6, you get the money. Miami, we talked about Tannehill being one of the sort of more buoyed by offense than his PFF grades. I think Jacksonville's defense, as bad as the team itself is, can probably shut down the Miami Dolphins here. And as we talked about Miami previously, they have difficulties defensively, so maybe even Kessler, Generation, and the D.D. Westbrooks of the world can make a little bit of hay here.
I have a hot take. The better quarterback is getting points in this game. All right, on to the next one.
Fire.
The Buffalo Bills travel to the New England Patriots. I wonder who the quarterback for Miami is next year.
Teddy Bridgewater, hometown.
That's a good call. That'd be fun. I mean, it can't be Tannehill, right?
Well, who does Tannehill play for? Because Tannehill strikes me as Bradford.
He's just not good. He's not even as good as Sam Bradford is. At least Sam Bradford has games where it's like, oh, wow, he's amazing. I don't think.
When? Week 1 last year?
Every week 1 of the past 3 seasons, except for this year. Patriots favored by 13 at home against the Bills. I don't know.
I think you bet the Patriots here. Patriots at home have had a better season than on the road. The Bills are a team. Honestly, to me, the Bills are being overreacted to. They beat Detroit, which I think people think is a good football team. They almost beat Miami. You know, they had a close game against the Jets. The Bills are far more representable of a football team than anybody going into the season would have ever thought.
Right.
And you know, New England, I think will stomp on them a little bit. New England was favored by just as much when they went to Buffalo just a couple months ago.
Right.
And it ended up being fine.
Josh Gordon no longer with the football team. I think that hurts them. Gronk is a corpse, and no Josh Gordon. I don't know. It worries me a little bit because they
certainly
throw the ball to someone. Green Bay, New York Jets. The Jets are getting a lovely 3 points.
This was a pick 'em early in the week, in which case Green Bay was a very good play. It's still probably leaning towards Green Bay though, right? Because the Jets
just coming off.
The Jets are what the
inspired play against the Texans.
Yeah, and then the Bills too. They beat the Bills 2 weeks ago. I think Darnold is so inconsistent that are you chasing the 2 good games he's had in a row, or are you gonna kind of go back to his mean this season? Green Bay.
Rodgers is playing this game, and Rodgers is a smart guy. Rodgers knows that this is how you pad those Hall of Fame stats.
Rodgers also knows that if you go 0-8 on the road in a season, people are going to forget about the fact that you threw 1 interception all year, or 2.
I don't know. It's a close one. Washington, Tennessee. We talked about Houston at Philly. The Nick Foles effect is very real because the Eagles are 2.5-point favorites. The Eagles are not a very good football team. They beat a very underwhelming Rams team in a Los Angeles stadium, the Coliseum, that was very much split between Rams and Eagles fans. It was crazy. I walked out. I'm not telling a story to say that I walked out on the field because I walked out on the field, but because I was so shocked at the number of Eagles fans that were there. It was 10-1. I mean, it was before the game, obviously, well before the game, but 10-1 Eagles to Rams fans in the stands. And so I don't know that I'm going to read too much into that game. But that being said, you know, they're less than a 3-point favorite at home. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a good. The thing is why do we get so much flack for being anti-Houston?
Right.
But like Houston, the entire market seems to believe, as we do, that Houston is a product of one of the simplest schedules in the league. They are, you know, their best player is a wide receiver, as we wrote about this week.
The best non-quarterback in the NFL. Check out Eric's story.
Yeah, and like I don't know if that's necessarily sustainable, but it does scare the heck out of me. If I'm backing the Eagles here -2.5, and I'm looking at those cornerbacks who are a hamburger away from being George, then I'm struggling at wondering how they cover Hopkins, especially if the guys like QT and QT plays. And the one matchup here that I think is in the Eagles' favor unequivocally is that terrible offensive line of Houston versus the pass rush that is the Eagles.
I don't disagree with you. Here's a question. Are the Eagles the most underrated team in the NFL right now? Who would you go with?
Oh, yeah. It's hard to call them underrated when they've legitimately sucked at times.
Right. Yeah.
I'm saying Colts, but people are like backing the Colts so
but they're
heavily.
a 9-point favorite. People love the Colts.
Yeah. Honestly, I do like. There's a good point to be made that it's Houston.
Interesting.
Because I think it's swung all the way back the other way. The fact that they're 2.5-point dogs to Nick Foles.
But don't you think they'll be a huge public team getting points?
I don't know. I think Houston's a small. Well, Houston's a big market. It's weird to think about, but it's not. It's not considered a big market. But
people love Houston. I love Deshaun Watson. I really hope the Texans win this game. I do. I would love to see Deshaun Watson in the playoffs, in a position to make some moves. I do not want to see the Eagles and Nick Foles.
Well, what you don't want to see is New England rewarded for having a mediocre season with another 2 seed.
Yep,
it would just be.
Would like to avoid that. Did you know Nick Foles doesn't look at the scoreboard?
Interesting, because there was that picture of him looking at his hair. So he spend more time looking at his hair than
when you're so focused on God and His good graces, you don't even recognize the scoreboard because
you know it's taken care of.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's how I get through life. Rams, Cardinals.
No, so the underrated.
You want to move on?
You want to move on? Okay.
I do. I just was curious who you think the most underrated team is, because I think you can make a case for the Eagles. And I think you're right in saying you can make a case for the Texans. The Colts, I just don't know if they're actually underrated.
Yeah.
I feel like people love the Colts because of their offense. Rams, Cardinals, let's move on.
Yeah. Bet the Cardinals. Plus 14.
Yep.
Just do it.
Bears, Niners, we talked about this.
Better quarterback getting points here, Nick Mullins.
Better quarterback getting points. Pittsburgh, New Orleans, a marquee matchup here. Here's the question that I have in this game. So the Saints are favored by 6. The Steelers desperately need to win this game.
Mm-hmm.
And the Saints, they do.
Their Super Bowl
less.
probability changes less than a percentage point with a win or a loss.
Yeah, so it's hard for me.
The Steelers' probability of winning the division is cut by a third if they lose. So there's so much more leverage for Pittsburgh.
So I think if this game is played in Week 7, the Saints are the right choice. And I think given where we are now, I have a hard time asking the Saints to cover in a dome against a very good offense.
The question you have to ask is, and this number has moved towards New Orleans. So it started out at 5.5,
which is interesting.
So the question you have to ask yourself is, what is more indicative of who the Pittsburgh Steelers are? Those are the 3-game stretch where they lost to Denver, Oakland, and San Diego,
right?
Or Los Angeles, I still see. Or are they the team that beat the Patriots by a touchdown last week, holding them to 10 points and really a fluky 7 points really at the beginning? So I think that the market thinks that the 3 games prior are more indicative.
Yeah,
I don't know, man. Because we did this on the YouTube channel. I'm making the case that the loss of the Chargers really wasn't a loss.
Yep.
On the stat sheet, neither was the loss of the Broncos. The 4 turnovers, including the throw right into the gut of a nose tackle.
One side of this -6.
I stay away. I think 6 is.
Some people play in season long to all pick them, where they have to pick all the games.
Hard to go against our numbers, but I can see why our numbers are not pointing. I don't know, man. New Orleans in a dome's tough.
Yep, I agree
to go against. So I'd still go New Orleans, but I can see the Pittsburgh side pretty. I think the Pittsburgh side's more than fair.
Yep. By the way, I just moved my contact, and now I can't see out of my left eye. This is the struggle that I go through. What I think is the best game of the week: the Seahawks and the Chiefs in Seattle. Seahawks are a 2.5 point home dog. I generally think the Seahawks as a home dog is one of the better bets that you can make. I remember last season when they were a 7-point dog to Philly.
Mm-hmm. That was a good one.
That might have been my second favorite bet of the entire season, besides the Patriots covering 16.5 at home. But this one worries me a little bit. So a couple things that I think are important to talk about. People always watch the last game that a team played. And I was actually talking to Chris about it because this is the Sunday night game. And he watched the Seahawks-Niners game and he goes, man, the Seahawks look terrible. They busted 3 coverages. It was really not a good look for them. But that was the ultimate trap game. They had just won a very important game for their playoff chances. That game against the Niners didn't matter that much, actually. It only dropped their chances of going to the playoffs by like 3 or 4%. And this game coming up is a big game on prime time. So that was the prototypical trap game. I'm not worried about that game. I'm going to look at the big picture for the Seahawks. Yeah. And the question is whether when you look at the big picture, are you emboldened by them or not?
No, because here's the deal. Seattle was a 3.5 point favorite against Minnesota 2 weeks ago. Yep.
They were.
Minnesota is not a mere point behind Kansas City.
Sure.
So either the market was wrong about Seattle back then, which last week against San Francisco would only go against, or the market is undervaluing Kansas City relative to Minnesota, which I think is probably true.
Based on what happened last week with Kansas City. Rewatching that Kansas City game was weird because it was just a penalty fest for them in the second half. Yeah. And I don't know, is that their offensive line? Is that the Chargers pass rush scaring them? Like you as a devout believer in
late convert.
What's your... Because that was disturbing how bad they were offensively.
So the Chiefs were with a backup left guard, a backup right guard,
sure,
a backup number 2 receiver, a third string running back, all that offensively, right? So that has to take a toll on discipline, doesn't it? Right? Like if you're not, and it was like the offensive line that got called for holding on that last drive or false start or whatever it was. So I do think like the lack of continuity, they do get these 10 days off, right? Which I do think matters, all that kind of stuff. I do think that matters in trying to be better that way. Defensively, they've been a mess all year, right? They've been very good up front, but they've, interchanged linebackers from last season. Their defensive backfield had Eric Berry for a half. They only gave 7 points during Eric Berry's first half. Full participant in practice this week. Will probably play the whole game now. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think a lot of obviously the Chiefs have been good because of the one constant, which has been Pat Mahomes along with Andy Reid. But along the edges, they have a ton of things that have been falling down at times for them this season. Kendall Fuller breaking his wrist prior to the game.
And Andy Reid not going for 4th and 3 at the Chargers 42. Brutal. That was a particularly terrible decision.
Yeah, I don't.
But I assume Andy Reid learns from that.
Well, this has been the thing that you've kind of made fun of me for, which I will make fun of myself for,
hilarious.
Which is the Chiefs' 3 losses are permuting the ways in which they can learn from losses, right?
This is the most optimistic fan take in history.
Admittingly so. They lost to the Patriots.
Your take yesterday that Jared Goff is closer to Nick Foles than he is to Pat Mahomes. I almost slipped.
Find the lie. The loss to the Patriots, they just got behind early.
Yeah.
The loss to the Rams, they turned the ball over late. The loss to the Chargers, they couldn't hold the lead, right? Like, you learn, those are 3 ways you lose in the NFL, right? So
sure.
Losing those games, I feel like, is somewhat instructive. I don't know if that's predictive of anything, but as a fan, I'm gonna be optimistic.
There are a couple things that worry me about the Seahawks. Their love of running the football, particularly on 2nd and long, is just terrifying.
How many tough points do they have in the bank, though?
It's so interesting because all you have to do is look at the contrast between the two teams. The Seahawks pass or run the ball 48% of the time on 2nd and long. The Chiefs 83%. The Chiefs pass it the most often. The Seahawks pass it the 30th most often. And the results bear in mind, or bear forward, which is more valuable, right? The Chiefs have been the most successful 2nd and long offense in terms of success rate, in terms of first down conversions, in terms of yards per play, in terms of touchdowns scored, and the Seahawks have been worse than 25th in all of those things. So that's one area where it often will get overlooked, but it might be a way that you can sort of tease these two teams apart. And, in general, I just think the Seahawks are not a very good defensive team. And I think people probably, because of Bobby Wagner's greatness and because it's the Seahawks, assume they're a little bit better than they really are. But on early downs, they are the worst in terms of yards per play. So
they're one of the worst teams in the NFC.
Yeah. So it's something that I would be a little worried about. That being said, it's in Seattle,
and that does matter a lot. It is one of those things where you look at the numbers and you say, that number just seems like it should be more like 3.5. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just tough. It's in Seattle at night. That is a real home field advantage. So this is one that, man, it's tough. If you had to pick one side with Chiefs favored by 2.5, you'd go with Kansas City.
I think so. I think the Chiefs are just better than the 5 points, than the 5 point difference that the market would imply relative to Minnesota.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm with you there, and I don't know. I was going to say the over, but I just always root for points. It's 53.5, by the way. Denver, 2.5 point favorite in Oakland. This game is just hot garbage.
I think if motivation's taken out of the equation, I think Denver's probably the side here. But Denver away from home is a struggle bus sometimes. The game that this reminds me of, though, is the game against Arizona, where they're playing a team. They're short favorites on the road, and that team happens to be so bad that Denver does have some fun.
Wow, what a way to cap off. Tess, Witt, Boog, Denver. Oh, and Tripp. Tess, Witt, Boog, Tripp, by the way, in case you didn't know that. Jeff Triplett, who I'm sure just loves the nickname Tripp. All right, that's going to do it for Week 16. Of course, we will be on the horn with you on Christmas Eve.
Football never sleeps.
Look, I always, over the holidays, that's when I actually have time to listen to podcasts, and there are never any that are out there. So we'll hit all of the Week 17 games, maybe a couple of playoff scenarios. Should be out by 10 or so Eastern time on Christmas Eve. We'll record it first thing Monday morning. Head to ProFootballFocus.com. Check out Eric's column on DeAndre Hopkins, and you can also check out our picks column. We'll do a better job of saying what the lock of the week is in there. Blow that. Maybe that's our editor's fault. Cam?
What the heck, Cam?
Yeah, all right. Later, guys. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Festivus. For the rest of us.